Okay, I know the title, a bit ridiculous. Unfortunately for my wallet, it's not untrue. Is that a double negative, Mike? It is true. The number is true. I paid a little bit less, mainly because of the time it took to do it, but we're at, what is the number? It's $23,334.17, something like that. So, you know, 20 to 25 grand, something like that. So let me explain myself. Back in the year 1999 is when I started my career, or started my life I guess you could call it career, in selling car stereo. I got pretty good at it. And of course, the reason why I started doing this is because I was super passionate about it. I loved it. And I had this car. This was the first real tuner car that I'd gotten in the year 2000, late 2000, early 2001, when I got this. And the very first thing I wanted to do was an Iasca Pro car stereo, high-end levels car stereo. We did kick panels, did an Illusion Audio 15, fiberglass enclosure in the rear. We did 3 JL Slash amplifiers that had just come out that were across the rear strut tower brace. And I don't know how much I spent on it, because I did it over the course of a long time, over probably a year. And we bought little parts and pieces, and I traded out some things with the installers. But this, when I got this car, the very first thing that came to mind is I wanted to build a modern, old school stereo. Right? So I wanted kick panels, which is old school, but I want modern drivers. And actually, these drivers existed back then, so very similar. I wanted stealth, but I wanted it to sound amazing. Right? So I didn't want to just put a JL stealth box in it. And so I called my friend Derek Kinney from Sound in Motion. There are certain people or certain styles that mesh. Right? And so Sound in Motion, I found them on the Porsche forum. They made this amazing box for a GT3, which of course you go back to the early parts of my channel. I did my own version of a Sound in Motion stereo where they kind of built it and sent it to me, and I installed it myself. Well, this time I wanted to send my car to them. And I basically gave Derek a blank canvas. I said, look, I want head unit in the dash. I want the Sony RSX GS9. So I want that head unit. I want kick panel speakers. I want Dyne Audio mid-range and tweeters, and then I want some sort of sub enclosure in the spare tire area, and I want it to be hidden, and I want it to sound amazing. I'm not listening to Drake all day, so I'm not interested in having 2, 3 JLW7s in the thing. I don't want to add a ton of weight to the car, but I want. And I believe it or not, when I was 20 years old, I wanted this kind of stereo. I was really into high-end audio, really into 2-channel stereo listening, and so that's the system. And this is the video you're about to watch. The clips that Derek took are way better than I thought. I thought he was going to take like 10 clips for me. He documented the entire process with the little G7X. So I couldn't be there for this because it took 2 months to do this, and I knew it would take a long time, and I'm okay with that. I told them, take your time. I want you working on this. I want you to work your magic. I want that new school, old school flavor. And the beauty of this is Derek's been doing this for 30 years. So he was around back in the day. So he built kick panels, but he also has evolved with modern stuff like a Moscone, aerospace processor. And so we're going to take you through this car from start to finish of him building it. And then at the end of this, it'll probably be a 2-part series. I don't know how long. He captured a ton of information. I don't want to cut any of that out. I want you to see the whole thing from start to finish. Because if you just look at this, you look at the kick panels, you look at the trunk, it doesn't look like anything's happened. And you'd be questioning yourself. You say, Matt got ripped off. Why in the world did he spend that much money on a stereo? That's stupid. The car's not even worth that much. I agree. You also have to remember that this is a car I'm going to do a raffle giveaway on and so we're going to make our money back in spades, based on the performance of the other giveaways that I've done. This car is going to be done extremely well. The stereo was a major component of that. The engine install, I'm bringing in best-in-class people that have the same style that I do. For instance, the car's going to go down. John at LHT is going to install a B18C. I don't want a K-swap. I don't want to do, so I want old school, new school. I want all the new school technology. I want all the new school install techniques, but I want an old school flavor to the car. And so John's going to get us a 200 wheel horsepower car that is extremely reliable, very streetable. Will be carb legal if we wanted to put the cat back on. And so the stereo was the same thing. I wanted a very old school, new school style. And so I'm bringing in these experts, these people that I've met over the years that share that same methodology that I have. And you're going to see this from Derek, of every minute detail that he works through, and I would never even have thought of that he took care of. So this system, just to kind of preface this before we get into this, you may want to just skip all this and go right to the install if you don't care. But the system consists of a Sony RSX GS9, which was $1,500. Then custom version. So what Sound & Motion does is they like the EsoTar woofers, but the EsoTar tweeters are too big. They're like this big, massive thing that doesn't fit anywhere. And so we're doing EsoTech tweeter, EsoTech crossover for the mid-range and the tweeter, and then again the EsoTar woofers, which cost a bunch. It's $2,400 for just the tweeter mid-range and crossover, and then it's another $700 a piece for the E650s, the EsoTar woofers, and a ton of labor. I mean, just the subwoofer box alone is like 30 hours of labor, and you'll see that in this. And then I did two Illusion C10s. Which are a neodymium style. They're out of phase, down firing subwoofers. You'll see how that's done. The new amazing Mosconi, the PR530 5-channel amp, which does an insane amount of output. It's like I think 300 watts per channel to the front pair, another 150 for the woofers, and then I think it does like 750 watts or 1,000 watts at 2 ohms to the 10-inch woofers, which is pretty incredible in a single amplifier. Normally 5-channel amps are a sacrifice. And then we did the Mosconi 6-8 Aerospace DSP for RTA tuning, and really that's all it is. And so when you look at this from face value, and you look at the head unit, and you look at the install, you're thinking, what in the world? There's nothing to this. It's just a front stage, a head unit, an amplifier, and a couple of subwoofers. But when you watch this and the care and the minute detail that goes into making it disappear, making it so that the car sounds amazing, making it so that that center image is right smack in your eyeballs in a Honda Civic, you'll see why I wrote the check for this insane system. So anyway, let's get into this video. We'll see how long it is. My guess is it's several hours. And at the end of this, I'm going to show you everything in person here in the garage and show you what it's all about.
Here's Matt's Civic. Ready for audio upgrade. Shipped straight from Florida. Day one at our new shop. Step one, careful disassembly of the door. Off with the old vapor barrier. And then you can see just how tinny it is inside. So that obviously makes the world's worst speaker enclosure. And we're going to do some sound deadening with Dynamat Extreme and hopefully get better results. Nothing major, but looks like the heat welds were compromised when they did the leather kit. We'll see what we can do to resurrect it. Here we are installing the first layer of sound deadening inside the door and the outer door skin. We're using Oh, it's hard to see. Dynamat, oh there we go, light. Dynamat Extreme, and we'll be replacing the vapor barrier as well. Lining the speaker to use the factory mounting holes. As you can see, the inner and outer skins of sound deadening is done. This Honda is going to be a lot quieter than it was. And the sound deadening continues. We removed the rear deck. I don't know, hard to tell, but took all the wire harnesses out, pre-punched holes where it goes so we can snap it back in. After dynamating the rear deck, we're adding just a little bit of foam to keep any rattling down against the back glass. Small but effective touch. Also used up some of the leftover scraps, sound deadening on the back of the panel. Well, after spending the last month or so moving in, we had to build a wood shop, which we have up and running now, the mechanics room, our router tables and all that stuff. We're now continuing, a little delayed, but we're continuing on Matt's car. So the dynamating's done. We're still going to dynamat some more on the sides. We ran all the power wire. We're going to be doing a fiber optic input, Toslink cable, but we ran RCA's analog kind of as a backup. Probably won't use them. And right now we're designing the layout back here. We're going to do the big Moscone amp facing up in the back, the two Illusion carbons facing down just ahead of it, and ultimately the spare tire well will be consumed, but nothing will be visible in the trunk. All right, let's go. So what I do with the Windex, this is the foundation, kind of like the very first piece that goes in, but besides cleaning the trunk and the Dynamat, I like to contour all of the shapes. Oh, sorry, it's kind of hard to do with one hand. But you'll see I cut out the little ribs for the crumple zone on the side. This piece with the center line needs to be centered, and then everything else can be built around it. But we want this thing to sit solid on the floor. We will bolt it through the car on the high spot. So in the event that water ever does get in here, if it does, it'll sit in the low spots. But the Windex, I don't know if you can tell, but will allow us to kind of see where we need to grind a little more, these little marks. So this is sitting on the high spot there, which is good. That's that big lump in the middle, which is good. Got a little more grinding to do here and here. And once we get that thing flat and level, then we can actually bolt it down, and building the rest of the system, well, the structures for the sub box and amp rack will be easy. So moving right along with my Windex transfer method, you can see that the wood now teeter-totters a little bit, which is actually perfect because I'm trying to locate this high spot there, which with the water you can see right here. So we're basically going to grind that out just until everything sits flush. And yeah, grind a little, measure a little, story. Alright, video time. Basically, we did the piece that's underneath with the wet and grind theory method, and made the same method for the top piece. And what that gives us is basically a piece that's nice and contoured all the way around. Literally just drops in and doesn't move at all if you try to move it. So we're going to cover that in carpet, so it'll be a nice tight fit. We were actually able to utilize the tie down that's underneath there for the spare tire, and we lined it up with the sub box. Not really sure how that's going to pan out, if we'll through bolt it or actually use that somehow. And we basically positioned the woofers there. They're going to sit on this baffle with enough clearance to vent down underneath the amp rack, and the amp rack's going to sit in the back here with a grill slash amp vent over it. All right, back to work. Well, here we are, still making wood, and Basically ended up going with the stack fab method, which seems to be the internet favorite. I don't know if I normally would have done it this way, but kind of was making each layer to contour to the box. Maximum air volume, rigidness, and uneven shapes also make for good sounding boxes for some reason. I found a nice long bolt that actually goes all the way down into the original spare tire tie down. I'll probably recess it one. These channels here are for wiring. The amp is going to sit inside here. But because the car itself, the panels are, it's hard to tell with the light, sorry. The panels are pretty tight, so I don't want to run and bulge wire along the back. So basically we're going to run the power in one of the speaker harnesses down here and the signal in the other speaker harness down that side into the amp right there. And yeah, that's it. I'll show it to you in pieces later. So here what we're doing is we basically measured the area that's going to get carved out of these different layers, and we have a brace in the center which also works out. This is the hole for the tie down, so there's going to be a lot of meat right there, nice and solid. We usually do 3/4 of an inch wall thickness and an inch around the actual woofer mount itself. This is off center just because the car is not centered, the well is not centered, so we have a little more airspace on this side than the other side, which transitions through to the other pieces. Anyway, time to do some routering. So after a little bit of routing, jigsawing, measuring, cutting, we have the bottom half of the sub enclosure done. This is actually the top. Which, once it's all stapled and glued together, will sit something like that. The hole in the middle is actually for this long bolt that still actually goes all the way down and tightens into the spare tire lockdown. There'll be 2 more mounts on the end here, and then the rest of it is literally just pressure fit. Will be carpeted, so there won't be any squeaks. The woofers fire down into this area, and it's actually a clear path all the way underneath there. That's a good amount of space to actually vent them out into the back. We've done this before in these applications and it works quite well. Okay, what we're doing now is basically just gluing all the layers together. Put some glue on, spread it around with the wheelie thing. Flip it over. These screw holes are alignments, and so is the post in the middle, and staple it all. Alright, since I honestly forgot if I shot this already, but all the pieces are glued together now. Everything except for the top baffle. This bolt right here literally bolts right into the spare tire tie down. These vent through, get some light on here, into back here, which is where they'll actually exit with a speaker grill. And I'll show you the bottom of it. Kind of cool. So get grounded out. Looks a little bit like a NACA duct, but it's basically the vents for the base to get out. Alright, back to work. Almost forgot the videotape again. Anyway, the box is all glued together, and right now these are the fastening points for the amplifier. It's going to be suspended a little bit in there, and then inside this hole are 2 T-nuts that will be bolted through the car from underneath. We're going to use stainless hardware that's on the outside, and we'll undercoat it. And the mounting points will basically be these 2. The center point here that mounts to the spare tire mount, and the rest of it is literally a pressure fit all the way around with the carpet. It's going to be a real nice snug fit. And yeah, all I do is I put a little bit of glue on these, wood glue, and I hammer them in, and then I put it in the car and actually tighten it up, make sure it fits, and then we'll carpet it. Now we have the amp mounted. You can see there's a little space underneath here. It's about a half an inch. Basically we just put some spacers up there. You can also see how the subs vent out, and on top of that, this right here is the high spot in the car. So in the car, these areas actually protrude even lower. So a lot of room for the base to come out, half-inch spacing all the way around. Maybe, maybe not, we'll put some LED lights underneath here to give it a little bit of a glow effect. Plenty of space for cooling on top. And part of the idea is that this, being a grill in the back of the car, will actually help cool the system. And watch me drop this thing. But yeah, you can see the bottom. There's also stainless steel hardware going through into the car. These are stainless inside here, if I didn't already mention that. Let's see if we can get in the car. What we're doing now is basically covering the bottom of the box with carpet. I'm using a lighter carpet, just automotive carpeting. I like the two-tone contrast. Once you put it in, you'll never see the light part, it'll be darker on top. And some people might be asking, why do we use MDF rather than fiberglass, especially on such a complex shape? Yes, the shape is complex with all of these contours and cutouts and so on and so forth, but the ultimate answer is sound quality. I always use the example that you've never seen a high-end home speaker made out of fiberglass, and if you can manipulate the shape and you don't mind grinding or creating some dust, we've had incredible luck with this method. We have the box covered. It's just flexible unbacked trunk liner carpeting, but it lends itself very nice to covering odd shapes without, you can kind of see underneath there, without any seams. So this basically just stretches all the way around. And what we're doing now is going to do the same thing in the trunk. A little bit dark to see. So right now I just kind of laid it in the carpet, pre-stretched it, and we're going to just contour it all the way around there. So when you lift up the trunk mat, the factory mat, it just looks clean underneath there rather than Dynamat and the factory metal. All right, here we go. We have the trunk carpeted and kind of contours nicely around. We have it so it just, I don't know if you can see this, but cuts short of that trim piece underneath there, and then on the edges it'll overlap with the side piece. Good morning. Last night we siliconed these wires in. That's the speaker wires, the subwoofer wires, one on either side. The hole that goes through a really thick part of the wood, kind of goes sideways, so at least 1.5 to 2 inches of lots of silicone. We take the insulation off where it goes in. You can see it on the other side, and actually fill between the wires, around the wires, and the whole cavity with silicone as we put it in. And then on the inside it's actually just mounted with a P-clip, so it'll be airtight, and that's what we want. Then the wires are going to come down here, the power wire, so this will basically just tie into it and then go right to the amplifier for the subwoofer output either side. Now I'm thinking of, because this is spaced up just a little bit, of giving it a little pizzazz with a piece of frosted acrylic and some LEDs going around the bottom of it. And I think what it'll do is it'll take the attention off of the odd shaped contour where it contours to the car, and we'll just do like a little 3/8 lip or 1/4 inch lip that goes all the way around, and light it up in blue to match the car. And one of the concerns I have is just the way these mount. I don't want it to shine through the oblong mounting holes, so I might have to make little black covers. Ultimately we just want a defined straight edge around it, because nothing is centered in this vehicle. Even the amp is a little bit off center, but I'm trying to fool the eye to not notice it, so to say. But we'll give that a try. The acrylic is going to be just sanded with like a DA like that, and then inside edge lit, and it just gives a really simple way of a diffused glowing border around it. It's very easy to do. I like the effect it has. Looks like $1 million and costs about 10. All right, so here's my piece of acrylic. Just standard regular clear acrylic. I took the paper off of this side and then de-ate it. It's 120 grit or something. This is not going to be the final finish, but by roughing up the surface, it gives me a good place to write on with my pencil. These are basically the through mounting holes where the amp mounts into the actual enclosure itself. And I'm going to cut this inside piece out, and then that'll be lined with just some strip LEDs going around it. I kept this radius bigger rather than smaller because the LEDs are spaced about 3/4 of an inch apart, and you don't want it to end up like one here and then the next one kind of over there. Anyway, the bigger the radius, the more diffused that light will be, or the more even. Yeah, so right now basically I'm going to cut the inside out, and then we'll round over all the edges and DA it all and put it together. There you have it. There's some blue LEDs lighting up the frosted acrylic. Actually looks better in real life than the camera. There we go. Yeah, basically all we did was just cut out the inside, glue some strip LEDs on there. Right now it's just running off the battery. It'll be hooked up to the dome light. Little acrylic spacers on the actual piece itself to space it up and also allow breathing room. This will probably be the last time you see these subs because they're going to be down firing inside the car. So this one's mounted, and we basically run dual 14 gauge and then just double it up for negative and positive. It makes a lot of consistency when you're wiring amps and crossovers and all that stuff. And what we do is that one-handed filming. So we tin the ends just to make them solid. There's a little company logo heat shrink on there. It also helps us differentiate what is positive. The one with the writing's positive. There we go. And that goes in there. And that goes in there. We'll put a couple of screws in it. And we'll put it in the car. Thundering bass to come. For the DSP, we're using the Moscone, the 6-to-8 aerospace, and the reason we're using that, if I didn't already say it, is because it has the Toslink input, fiber optic, and I basically found a nice little spot to tuck that behind here. We made this little panel. It's got a couple of spacers on it. They basically bolt to these 3 holes with factory screws, factory looking screws. That's an ISO screw. And these are 2 screws with exact matching heads, but they're a little bit longer to go where the spacers are. This piece kind of bolts up behind here with a service loop. We are also using a USB so we can tune it. Sorry. Then this is the hub extension, which is actually inside this piece, and that allows us to add the bass knob to it. And the reason we're running the bass knob through this is so we don't have to run the crossover, the passive crossover, I'm sorry, the active crossover on the amplifier. You could just plug it in directly into that and achieve the same thing, but figured the less distractions in the signal path, the cleaner the signal. Anyway, I'll show a video in a second with that piece up there. There it is installed. Yeah, really not much else to say. We do put the Sound and Motion sticker on there just so it's easy to identify if somebody peeks behind the panel looking for components. This piece is going to be accessible in case you need to tune it. You can kind of just pull it back from the panel there. Probably put it up there somehow. It's all recessed behind there. Yes, I did use these screws originally to mount it. That's why there's a little mark there. And once I put the original panel back in, I realized those were the clips, the holes to mount the clips for the panel. So we moved the whole thing over a little bit. Also the drain tube for the sunroof, you can tell, I don't know, it's hard to see, but it's floating freely in there. No compromise, no kinks, no issues with water. Look what we found under the back seat, some uninvited guests. I think there's the rest of them as legs. Anyway, what we did is we ran the fiber optic cable on the driver's side of the transmission hump and the power cable. So this is the power cable for the actual radio. We're using 14 gauge wire because the Sony RSX comes with this this heavy duty power supply, probably an external unit for sound quality, and we're running that down the passenger side and the toslink cable down the driver's side. And basically we just taped it down. We keep it under the carpet so it is secured, and where there's moving parts like the handbrake, we just tape it to the sides there and run it up to the head unit. One of the things we like to do is, sorry about the lighting, so we actually solder, just scrape that off, solder the ground right to the chassis of the car. So there's a couple of double welds here, and it's a nice solid point that you can solder. Obviously you have to be careful. We do it with the torch so you don't overheat it. Double welds will allow you to dissipate a lot of heat without affecting the undercoating or whatever's on the other side. So it takes a little bit of practice, but this gives you a nice solid ground. This is obviously for the amplifier, and then the two thinner ones, there's a 16 gauge and a 14 gauge. The 14 gauge is for the head unit and the 16 gauge is for the DSP, but they'll basically all be terminated or grounded in the same spot. We're going to throw some primer on that and then put the side panel back on, and the rest of this wiring will go in a harness over that. There'll actually be two fuses here as well, accessible underneath the back seat for the DSP and the head unit. It's kind of an unconventional way of doing it, but seemed to make sense in this application. Alright, as silly as it seems to try and find a spot for the tiny little passive crossover networks, it was a little bit of a challenge. My plan was to put them right behind here, except the cover is so flexible that, or so tightly formed that they would actually bulge it out. So I found a spot up here, but there's this rib that protrudes behind the seat belt, and so I made these little spacers here. These are basically routed out, and they mount onto there. There's some thread certs in there. It's just extruded PVC, and then the crossovers will mount one here and one over there. Excuse me for the bad video, but I'm like upside down like a contortionist in this trunk trying to bolt these things in. We did tap two holes in here so you can do 8/32 threads in it. Just looks nice and straight, and that's it. I'm gonna put the crossovers in. Alright, just before we put the rear interior quarter panel back on, I just wanted to point out that we had the two fuses here. So these are tied off of the main power wire, so all the power and all the grounding is at the same spot. Here's the grounding junction that I showed before. The 3 amp fuse is basically the one for the Moscone DSP, and the 10 amp fuse is the one for the Sony high-res player power supply. And yeah, right now we're going to assemble it. We got all our harnesses done. There's one on this side, one on the other side, and we're going to put this together, hopefully for the last time. Found Gabriella on the driver's side quarter panel. Should we leave her or remove her? Well, it never looks like much after all that work, but I guess that was kind of the intent. So we have the two harnesses running through there. We did put some Expando on it just to make it look nice. The amp is wired up and backlit. And we actually tied into the trunk latch here. So whenever you close the trunk, the lights shut off, and when you open the trunk, they turn on. If you want to disconnect them, just like the trunk light, you can just pull the little plug up here.
So here it is, 25 grand. That's it, nothing. There's nothing there. If you've watched this whole series, you know what's underneath here, which is a whole lot going on. And so when you peel back the layers, and they made several improvements to just how all of this is set up. Even the carpeting in here is much sounder, much nicer. Carpeting the base layer here. But the sub box is right here, which of course you saw all the detail of the sub box, then down firing into the dynamatted, heftier tub of the car, and then the sound comes up. The bass comes up again. Bass is non-directional, but the bass comes up through the ducting, if you will, underneath the box. And then in here, you saw all the specific wiring. Everything's tied, everything's shrink wrapped, everything's just, gosh darn perfect. And all the little minute details of how to get that box to fit. And then the channel, like the channel running through so that the power and ground and speaker wires and all of that stuff can work. And then the, the grills that he's using, and then painting and then setting in place. And so you end up with a really amazing setup of just complete disappearance. This is so much better than my system back in the day where I had the amps exposed and this big show box. This is exactly what I wanted it to look like, exactly what I wanted it to be. The Moscone processors over here on the left, the crossovers are up in the front there, but completely invisible. No one can tell. It just looks like a factory quality system, but with audio like you've never heard. So the only thing I've got to do, I haven't got my license plate yet, and so I'll Dynamat the license plate and make sure the plate frame is really stout and sturdy here, but we don't have the typical Honda rattle. So the rear deck would rattle, and so that's all been taken care of. According to also the tub, these Hondas tend to do pretty well with bass, and so again, we're also not we're not reaching SPLs of 150 dB or anything like that in here. So that's what the trunk looks like. Really, really amazing. No more spare tire, but that's okay. We don't need a spare tire. So we're offsetting the weight of the spare tire. I mean, my guess is we probably gained 25, 30 pounds of weight, but not anything super significant in the car when it's all said and done. Man, I literally could not be more pleased. I was just smiling ear to ear watching all the stuff you guys just watched. All that detail, all that specific little things that I would have never even thought to ask for. It's just incredible. Derek is a wizard. And so now I have this amazing system that, when you're driving down the road, you have the choice. You can turn it off, listen to the car, listen to the engine, listen to the intake, listen to the exhaust. Or if you don't want to do that, you can just turn the audio on and really sort of lose yourself in that sort of incredible sound. And I found myself sitting in the driveway just searching for things to listen to. So that's what a $25,000 stereo looks like in a Honda Civic. I know it's a bit ridiculous, but I only live once, and this is a childhood dream of mine, and so I'm living it the only way I know how, and that's to do it on a level of obsession that is a little different than most. And I think that those who know are looking at this equipment, looking at this install, looking at the quality here, you'll understand why I sent it all the way to Boston, why I had Derek, why I chose him to do it, when there are audio installers all over the country that are great. There's certain people that have certain styles that align. So the only way for you to listen to this is you're going to have to come visit HQ, or you'll have to become friends with whomever I give this car away to. We'll likely be doing a giveaway in January. It's going to take a little longer. I just booked John from LHT to do the engine swap. Again, we're taking the B16 out and doing a B18C JDM Type R engine with JDM Type R transmission that'll be built, and it'll be, like I said earlier, it'll be at about 200 wheel horsepower and super smooth, super clean, super OE-like. And so next up for me on this car will be dealing with suspension, figuring out which wheels are going to end up on the car, and we'll go from there. So anyway, thanks for watching this part of the series. The Civic is back. I'll be working on it, and we'll be getting more content, more data, putting more stuff. I've got a whole shelf filled with parts behind me here. So all the little details we're going to share with you. And then, like I said, I'm going to give this car away. We'll be hosting and keeping you up to date on that in the future. So thanks for watching. Thanks to Sound in Motion. Go follow us on Emotion on Instagram. Call them up if you have your Porsche, BMW. I know most people aren't going to spend 25 grand on their Civic, but if you want to do a SoundQ, really amazing system, and they really specialize in Teslas and Porsches and BMWs and Mercedes and stuff like that. But if I would tell you to call up reliable carriers and ship your car to them. I plan on shipping my E92 up to them next to do a system in that. So, yeah. I'm excited. Hope this makes sense to some of you. If it doesn't to others, then, you know, can't help you there. This is a dream, and somebody's going to get this Civic, and I'm probably going to be 150K into this thing before it's all said and done. So anyway, thanks for watching. As always, stay tuned for more crazy. I love this system. Catch you on the next one.